morning, guys, and welcome back. Today I wanted to give you kind of my top 5 upgrades, at least in my opinion, that I've done so far to this motorcycle. Now I've done more than 5, but to keep the video within a reasonable length, I'll give you the top 5, the most important ones I think you should do to get a little more enjoyment out of this motorcycle. Now for me, the first one was the clutch spring. So what was weird with me on those, and it's not something that you're going to notice up front when you first buy this bike, especially if you're a beginner, which is the general reason to buy this bike, is that you'll start feeling the clutch slipping. For me, when I started getting it to slip was when I was in a hard corner and I was trying to get out of that corner. I would just feel giving the throttle, having like no power, but hearing the engine rev. It was super weird. You weren't going anywhere when you're doing that. Now, common day-to-day riding like we're doing right now, that's not going to matter at all. It's not going to happen until you get into corners really hard and try and wax your way out. So if you're new to riding, probably not doing any of that yet. If you notice it happening, plan out the purchase with your next oil change, because you do have to drain the oil to get at the clutch springs. Now the job was fairly simple. There are videos out there already. Kind of wish I would have done all those videos of putting this bike together and setting it up the way I did, but I didn't. There's stuff out there for you to watch that's pretty cool that'll show you how to swap out some clutch springs. It's a really simple job. There wasn't much to take apart after you've drained the oil, and after you get the plate off, the external cover off, there's only 3 more nuts in there that you have to loosen, and then you just swap out the springs and put them back on, and they're fairly inexpensive. I want to say it was like a $35 spring purchase, and once that was done, yeah, that problem was gone. This clutch does not slip at all anymore. So that was upgrade number 1. Upgrade number 2 was the shorter throw throttle. Now I bought this R7 throttle tube and I stuck it on. What you're trying to get out of it, a shorter distance to full throttle. Instead of having to just crank your wrist around all the way to get the throttle to hit its maximum limit, obviously it's just a shorter throw. That was a very inexpensive, very cool upgrade. Makes a big difference for me, and one of the main reasons for that is I did wreck a motorcycle 3 years or so ago, and I did get surgery on my wrist, so I was not able to even twist my wrist. So I either had to use one of those little black plastic guards that I could just roll my wrist on to get the throttle to go a little bit farther, but getting this little throttle tube helped considerably for that. So not to say that you have some kind of wrist history and you can't spin your wrist, it sure does make it nice to have that shorter throw. Woo! Such a fun little bike to ride, guys. So for the next 3, they're all joined together, and it all has to do with ergonomics. Not to say that there's anything wrong with an upright bike. They're great. They're super comfortable. I just personally enjoy having that more aggressive style position on a bike, which in most terms means less comfortable, yes. But you do learn how to change your position and lean on your shoulder, put your hand on your hip. You got to do all this weird dancing around to be comfortable on it, but the trade-off for me is worth it. We'll start with the first one, which would be the Woodcraft clip-ons here. These are actually risers. They're not a common clip-on to lower the bike, but if you look at your 400, and you can actually see how raised handlebars are. So these risers are what will fit. In fact, you can't buy a normal clip-on. You have to buy a risered clip-on if you're going to put it on this bike. And the main reason is there's no room under. The fairings sit up way too high for you to put like a real clip-on on there that's straight. And then the other negative to that would be I do have them as low as I can possibly get them, but that still slightly raises the position to a straight forward for the clutch and the brake. So if not, otherwise it'll hit here on the bike. There's some trade-offs to doing what I'm doing with the clip-ons here, but what was cool about these clip-ons was the fact that you didn't have to take the triple tree apart to put them on. The clamps that go around the triple tree are 2 pieces that are separate that you can bolt on, and you don't have to take the triple tree apart, which was one of the main reasons why I went with this Woodcraft one. So that's upgrade number 1 for ergonomics, in my opinion. The next upgrade for ergos is some kind of a rear set, and the reason for that is we want to get the rear sets higher and more to the back to kind of help roll you into that position a little bit and give you a little more clearance while you're out there ripping and dragging them knees. It just helped with that position to roll you forward slightly and make it a little more aggressive. Issues I ran into when I was doing the research on the clip-ons was certain clip-ons don't have like either a bracket for the brake, or the cable's not long enough, or it messes with ABS. There was always some annoying little issue with the rear sets I was looking at. And then I stumbled across these Yoshimura plates. So they were pretty straightforward with these plates that you don't have to relocate anything, and it basically works the same. You use the same exact rear sets you already have. All you're doing is replacing the bracket itself that's already a part of the bike that holds these side members of the bike together, as well as this big thick bolt in the middle is what's holding your swing arm on. So that's another thing to pay attention to. You don't have to relocate, but you do have to get inventive with how you're going to hold the motorcycle up. You are going to be basically taking the swing arm off of the bike. You're only removing the bolt, so it's not like you're removing the swing arm, but it will move around on you, and you will have to kind of work that bolt back in after you've put the new Yoshimura plates on. So there's a little more to it. It's a little more technical of a job, but it wasn't not a doable thing. You know, once you got a floor jack under the bottom of the bike, you could raise and lower the bike slightly and still manipulate the swing arm. So not trying to discourage you from doing it. I'm just trying to say maybe do a little research if these are the plates you want, on what you'd have to do to get that done. But to me, it was a great upgrade to not have to relocate anything. Everything's stock. I actually don't mind the rear sets, the stock feel of the rear sets on this bike. And then again, on most bikes I don't really care, as long as they're not the little rubber pads and they're metal grippy. I'm usually fine with them. I thought it was a pretty good purchase, and it's been great for years. The fifth upgrade, and the third one in the ergonomics, is the rear seat. The stock one that comes with the bike, it's designed for shorter riders. This is a beginner bike. The whole point is it's a beginner bike. But what sucks about that is it does lower the bike, so people with shorter inseams can easily sit on this bike and still flat foot it, or have a better chance of flat footing it. Either way, it's a more comfortable feel knowing that you can get your feet on the ground when you're new. But the downside of that seat is the fact that it's heavily rolled down and into the tank. So the problem I always had with it was it just rolls your crotch straight into the tank. I obviously didn't like all that much, and it was a little low. I wanted to be pushed up a little bit higher so that I could easily lean forward and make it easier to kick your ass back to the little stop pad in the back. So you can see this seat's just a little bit higher in the middle here. It's a little bit higher in the back. It doesn't quite roll your crotch super hard forward like the normal stock one does. And this seat, I bought it from Kawasaki. It's actually a legit, real Kawasaki seat replacement to do exactly what we're doing. I think it's actually called an ergo seat. I'll put a link down there so that you guys can check it out if that's something you're interested in. If you're a little bit taller rider and you're not worried about the flat footing this bike, this did make a huge difference to me. I have liked it much more since I did this upgrade. I think it's totally worth it. So that was the top 5. Those are the upgrades I feel were the best money spent, basically. I hope this was decent information for you. This is a fantastic little motorcycle and an amazing little beginner bike. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.